Morning, guys. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start our dodecahedron for today. It's going to be number 5. We're going to be working on visualizing what happens in our chapters today. So I want you to be thinking, okay, how could I draw out what it is that we're reading about? All right, so we're on chapter 9 and 10 today. We are starting with page 55, the blood bottler. So suddenly a tremendous thumping noise came from outside the cave entrance, and a voice like thunder shouted, "Runt! I see you there, Runt! I is hearing you jabbling. Who is you jabbling to, Runt?" "Look out!" cried the BFG. "It's the Blood Blattler!" But before he had finished speaking, the stone was rolled away, and a 50-foot giant, more than twice as tall and wide as the BFG, came striding into the cave. He was naked except for a dirty little piece of cloth around his bottom. Sophie was on the tabletop. The enormous, partly eaten snozzcumber was lying near her. She ducked behind it. The creature came clumping into the cave and stood towering over the BFG. "Who was you jabbering to in here just now?" he boomed. "I is jabbering to myself," the BFG answered. "Piff-fliz-fuzz," shouted the bug bottler. "Bug swallup," he boomed. "You is talking to a human being. That's what I is thinking." Uh-oh, we're gonna have to see if he thinks that he found Sophie. "No, no," cried the BFG. "Yes, yes," boomed the blood bottler. "I is guessing you have snitched away a human being and brought it back to your bunghole as a pet. So now I is wriggling out and guzzling it as extra snacks before my supper." Uh-oh, he looks absolutely gross here. The poor BFG was very nervous. "There's no one in here," he stammered. "Why didn't you leave me alone?" The blood bottler pointed a finger as large as a tree trunk at the BFG. "Runty little scrumscrewer," he shouted. "Piffling little swishfiggler, squimpy little bottlewort, punty little pogswizzler. I is now going to search the premises." He grabbed the BFG by the arm. "And you is going to help me do it. Us together is going to wrinkle out that tasteful little human being," he shouted. The BFG had intended to whisk Sophie off the table as soon as he got the chance and hide her behind his back, but now there was no hope of doing this. Sophie peered around the chewed-off end of the enormous snozzcumber, watching the two giants as they moved away down the cave. The blood bottler was a gruesome sight. His skin was reddish pink. There was black hair sprouting on his chest and arms and on his stomach. The hair on his head was long and dark and tangled. His foul face was round and squashy looking. The eyes were tiny black holes. The nose was small, but the mouth was huge. It spread right across the face, almost ear to ear, and it had lips that were like two gigantic purple frankfurters, lying one on top of the other. Craggy yellow teeth stuck out between the two purple frankfurter lips, and the river of spits ran down over the chin. It was not in the least difficult to believe that this ghastly brute ate men, women, and children every night. The blood bottler, still holding the BFG by the arm, was examining the rows and rows of bottles. "You and your piping bottles," he said, shouting. "What is you putting in them?" "Nothing that would interest you," the BFG answered. Uh-oh. "You's only interested in guzzling human beings, and you is dotting as a dog's waggler," cried the blood bottler. Soon the blood bottler would be coming back, Sophie told herself, and he was bound to search the tabletop. But he couldn't possibly jump off the table. It was 12 feet high. She'd break a leg. The snozzcumber, although it was thick as a percumbular, was not going to hide her if the blood bottler picked it up. She examined the chewed-off end. It had large seeds in the middle, each one as big as a melon. They were embedded in soft, slimy stuff. Taking care to stay out of sight, Sophie reached forward and scooped away half a dozen of these seeds. This left a hole in the middle of the snozzcumber large enough for her to crouch in, so as long as she rolled herself up into a ball. She crawled into it. It was wet and slimy hiding place, but what did that matter if it was going to save her from being eaten? Ick. Remember the snozzcumber from last chapters? Oh, it stinks and it's icky and I do not want to be sitting there. The Bud Blottler and the BFG were coming back towards the table now. The BFG was nearly fainting with fear. Any moment, he was telling himself, Sophie would be discovered and eaten. Suddenly, the Blood Bottler grabbed the half-eaten snozzcumber. The BFG stared at the bare table. Sophie, where is you? He thought desperately. You cannot possibly jumping off that high table. So where is you hiding, Sophie? So this is the filthy, rotsome glubbage you was eating, boomed the Blood Bottler, holding up the partially eaten snozzcumber. You must be cockles to be guzzling such rub squash. For a moment, the Blood Bottler seemed to have forgotten about his search for Sophie. The BFG decided to lead him further off the track. That is the scrumdiddlyumptious cute snozzcumber, he said. It is guzzling, it is gleefully, even night and day. Is you never trying snozzcumber, Blood Bottler? Human beans is juicier, the Blood Bottler said. You was taking rum tot, the BFG said, growling braver by the second. He was thinking that if only he could get the Blood Bottler to take one bite of the repulsive vegetable, the sheer foulness of its flavor would send him bellowing out of the cave. I was happy to let you sample it, the BFG went on, but please, when you see how truly glumptious it is, do not be guzzling the whole thing. Leave me a little snitchet for my supper. The Bud Bottler stared suspiciously with small piggy eyes at the snozzcumber. Sophie, crouched inside the chewed-off end, began to tremble all over. You's not swift-diddling me, is you? Said the Blood Bottler. Never, cried the BFG passionately. Take a bite, and I'm positive you will be shouting out how scrumdiddlyumptious this wonder drug is. The BFG could see the greedy Blood Bottler's mouth beginning to water, more than ever at the prospect of extra food. Vegetables is very good for you, he went on. It is not healthsome way to be eating meaty things. Just this once, the Blood Bottler said. I is going to taste these rotsome eats of yours, but I is warning you that if it is filthsome, I is smashing over your sludgy little head. He picked up the snozzcumber. Uh-oh, Sophie's meat is sitting in there. Oh no! I hope he doesn't try to eat the end of it, because then she'll be eaten. Ah! Began raising it on its long journey to his mouth, some 50 feet up in the air. Sophie wanted to scream, don't! But that would have been an even more certain death. Crouching among the slimy seeds, she felt herself being lifted up and up and up. Suddenly there was a crunch as the Bud Bottler bit a huge chunk off the end. Sophie saw his yellow teeth clamping together, a few inches from her head. Then there was utter darkness. She was in his mouth. She had caught a whiff of his evil-smelling breath. It stank of bad meat. She waited for the teeth to go crunch once more. She prayed that she would be killed quickly. Youch! roared the Blood Bottler. Unwelch! Eek! And then he spat. All the great lumps of snozzcumber that were in his mouth, as well as Sophie herself, went shooting out across the cave. If Sophie had struck the stony wall of the cave, she would most certainly have been killed. Instead, she hit the soft folds of the BFG's black cloak, hanging against the wall. She dropped to the ground, half stunned. She crawled under the hem of the cloak, and there she crouched. Okay, so Sophie is safe, but now she's all gross. You little swine bugler, roared the Blood Bottler. You little pig swiller. He rushed at the BFG and smashed what was left of the snozzcumber over his head. Fragments of the filthy vegetables splashed all over the cave. You's not loving it? The BFG asked innocently, rubbing his head. Loving it, yelled the Blood Bottler. That is the most disgustingest taste that I have ever touched in my teeth. You must be bugglers to be swallowing like that. Every night you could be galloping off happy as a hamburger and gobbling juicy human beings. Eating human beings is wrong and evil, the BFG said. It is guzzly and glumptious, shouted the Blood Bottler. And tonight I is galloping off to Chile to swabble up a few human chili beans. Is you wishing to know why I choose Chile? I is not wishing to know anything, the BFG said, very dignified. I is choosing Chile, the Blood Bottler said, because I is fed up with the taste of Eskimos. It is important I is plenty of cold eats in this scrumbling hot weather, and the next coldest thing to an Eskimo is a chili bean. Human beings from Chile is very chilly. Horrible, the BFG said. You ought to be ashamed. Other giants is saying that they is wanting to gallop off to England tonight to guzzle up school childers, the Bud Butler said. Is very fond indeed of English school childers. They has a nice inky, booky flavour. Perhaps I will change my mind and go to England with them. You is disgusting, the BFG said. And you is an insult to the giant peoples, shouted the blood butler. You is not fit to be a giant. You is a squeaky little squiddler. He is a pibbling little pipsqueak. You is a cream puff nut. With a horrible blood butler giant strode out of the cave. The BFG ran to the cave entrance and quickly rolled the stone back into place. Okay, so at least he left. Sophie, he whispered. Sophie, where is you, Sophie? Sophie emerged from under the hem of the black cloak. I'm here, she said. The BFG picked her up and held her tenderly in that palm of his hand. Oh, I am so happy to be finding you all in one lump, he said. I was in his mouth, Sophie said. You was what? Cried the BFG. Sophie told him what happened. And there I was telling him to eat the flubsole snozzcumber, and you was in all the time inside it, the BFG cried. Not much fun, Sophie said. Just look at you, poor little chiddler, cried the BFG. You're all covered in snozzcumber and giant spit. He set about cleaning her up as best he could. I is hating those other giants more than ever now, he said. You know what I should like? What? Sophie said. I'd like to find a way of disappearing them, every single one. I'd be glad to help you, Sophie said. Let me see if I can think of a way of doing it. So they might be trying to get rid of the other giants. Okay, so he's trying to help clean her up. Let's see how she's going to do this. All right. So chapter 10. Frost Bottle and Whiz Poppers. By now, Sophie was beginning to feel not only extremely hungry, but very thirsty as well. Had she been at home, she would have finished her breakfast long ago. Are you sure there's nothing else to eat around here except those disgusting smelly snozzcumbers? She asked. Not even a spizzwinkle, answered BFG. In that case, may I please have a little water? She said. Water, said the BFG, frowning mildly. What is water? We drink it, Sophie said. What do you drink? Frobscottle, announced the BFG. All giants is drinking frostcottle. It is nasty as your snozzcumbers? Sophie asked. Nasty, cried the BFG. Never is it nasty. Frobscottle is sweet and jumbly. He got up from his chair and went to a second huge cupboard. He opened it and took out a glass bottle that must have been 6 feet tall. The liquid inside of it was pale green, and the bottle was half full. Here's the frobscottle, he cried, holding the bottle up, proud and high, as though it contained some rare wine. Delumptious fizzy frobscottle, he shouted. He gave it a shake, and the green stuff began to fizz like mad. But look, it's fizzing the wrong way, Sophie cried, and indeed it was. The bubbles, instead of traveling upwards and bursting out of the surface, were shooting downwards and bursting at the bottom. A pale green frothy fizz was forming at the bottom of the bottle. What on earth is you mean the wrong way? Asked the BFG. In our fizzy drinks, Sophie said, the bubbles always go up and burst at the top. Upwards is the wrong way, cried the BFG. You mustn't ever be having the bubbles going upwards. That's the most flesh-bunking rubbish I've ever hearing. Why do you say that? Sophie asked. You was asking me why? Cried the BFG, waving the enormous bottle around, as though he were conducting an orchestra. You was actually meaning to tell me you cannot see why it is a sloppy mistake to have the bubbles flying up instead of down? You said it was flush-bunking. Now you said it is scrotty. Which is it? Sophie asked politely. Both, cried the BFG. It is a flush-bunking and a scrotty mistake to let the bubbles go upwards. If you can't see why, you must be as quacky as the duck-pound. By Ringo, your head must be so full of frog-swiggles and bug-swoggles it is fritting if I know how you can think at all. Why shouldn't the bubbles go upward? Sophie asked. I will explain, said the BFG. But tell me first, what name is you calling your frobscottle by? One is Coke, Sophie said. Another is Pepsi. There are lots of them. There's also Sprite, Mountain Dew, and everything else that we drink now. And the bubbles is all going up? They are all going up, Sophie said. Catastrus, cried the BFG. Upgoing bubbles is a catastrus dystrophy. Will you please tell me why? Sophie said. If you will listen carefully, I will try to explain, said the BFG. But your brain is so full of bug whiffles, I doubt you will ever understand. I'll do my best, Sophie said patiently. Very well then. When you was drinking this cokey drink of yours, the BFG said, it is going straight down into your tummy. Is that right? Or is it left? It's right, Sophie said. And the bubbles is going also into your tummy, right or left? Right again, Sophie said. And the bubbles is fizzing upwards? Of course, Sophie said. Which means, said the BFG, that they will all come swiffling up your throat and out of your mouth and make a awesome belchy burp. That's often true, Sophie said. But what's wrong with a little burp now and again? It's sort of fun. Burping is filthsome, the BFG said. Us giants is never doing it. But with your drink, Sophie said, what was it you called it? Frobscottle, said the BFG. With Frobscottle, Sophie said, the bubbles in your tummy will be going downwards, and that could have a far nastier result. Hehe. Why nasty, said the BFG, frowning. Because, Sophie said, blushing a little, if they go down instead of up, they'll be coming out somewhere else with an even louder and ruder noise. A whiz popper, cried the BFG, beaming at her. Us giants is making whiz poppers all the time. Whiz popping is a sign of happiness. It is music to our ears. You surely is not telling me that a little whiz popping is forbidden among the human beings? It's considered extremely rude, Sophie said. But you use whiz popping, as you not, now and again, asked the BFG. Everyone is whiz popping if that's what you call it, Sophie said. Kings and queens are whiz popping, presidents are whiz popping, glamorous film stars are whiz popping, little babies are whiz popping, but where I come from, it's not polite to talk about it. Yeah, not usually when they go, well, happens. Redunculous, said the BFG. If everyone is making whiz poppers, then why not talk about it? We is now having a swiggly of this delicious frobscottle, and you'll see the happy result. The BFG shook the bottle vigorously. Pale green stuff fizzed and bubbled. He removed the cork and took a tremendous gurgling swig. It's glumpy, he cried. I love it. For a few moments, the BFG stood quite still, and a look of absolute ecstasy began to spread over his long, wrinkly face. Then suddenly the heavens opened, and he let fly with a series of the loudest and rudest noises Sophie had ever heard in her life. They reverberated around the walls of the cave like thunder, and the glass jars rattled on the shelves. But most astonishing of all, the force of the explosion actually lifted the enormous giant clear off his feet like a rocket. I don't think that's quite how it works in the human world, but we'll see what happens to Sophie. Whoopee, he cried when he came down to the earth again. Now that is whiz-popping for you. Sophie burst out laughing. She couldn't help it. Have some yourself, cried the BFG, tipping the neck of the enormous bottle towards her. Don't you have a cup? Sophie said. No cups, only bottle. Sophie opened her mouth, and very gently the BFG tipped the bottle forward and poured some of the fabulous frobscottle down her throat. And oh gosh, how delicious it was. It was sweet and refreshing. It tasted vanilla and cream with just the faintest trace of raspberries on the edge of the flavor. And the bubbles were wonderful. Sophie could actually feel them bouncing and bursting all around her tummy. It was an amazing sensation. It felt as though hundreds of tiny people were dancing a jig inside of her and tickling her with their toes. It was lovely. It's lovely, she cried. Just wait, said the BFG, flapping his ears. Sophie could feel the bubbles traveling lower and lower down her tummy, and then suddenly, inevitably, the explosion came. The trumpet sounded, and she too made the walls of the cavern ring with the sound of music and thunder. Bravo, shouted the BFG, waving the bottle. It was very good for a beginner. Let's have some more. Very different for Sophie, huh? All right, so that is the end of our chapters for today. For your dodecahedron circle, we're going to be, again, visualizing something funny or something cool that you enjoyed that might have happened in our chapters 9 and 10 today. Please make sure that you submit a clear picture onto Class Dojo. A little reminder is each and every one of these pages needs to be completed. I am taking a grade on completion, so either you did it or you didn't. as well as actual accuracy on the ones that are for writing. Yesterday I gave one that was required for part of our writing grade. I need to make sure that you guys have that one turned in no later than by next Thursday, okay? So if you have any questions, let me know, and if not, see you next time. Bye, guys.